DeWitt. I'm a transfer paper product manager. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of the 2019 calendar year. Will digital transfer systems make direct-to-garment systems obsolete? Presented by Conde Systems Incorporated. I am your host for today's webinar. My name is Douglas DeWitt. I'm a product manager here at Conde Systems Incorporated. Let me go ahead and take this opportunity to wish everyone attending a Happy New Year. We hope that you continue to partner with Conde throughout this upcoming year and give us the opportunity to show you all the new digital decorating methods and products that are going to be available come 2019. A few other things to note, this presentation will be a straight-through presentation. I will not be taking questions during the presentation, but at the end of the presentation, I'll have a slide available that will allow you opportunities to contact Conde in case you have any questions regarding the information we're going to cover in this webinar. Also, to let everyone know, this webinar is being recorded, and within a few days, we should have the webinar posted to our YouTube channel, which is condetv.com. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation here. Will digital transfer systems make DTGs obsolete? My name is Douglas DeWitt. I am a product manager here at Conde Systems Incorporated. This is my 25th year with the company. I originally started out with sales, but about 10 years ago, I took over product management for our digital transfer papers and what we call our heat transfer systems, which will be some of the OKI data systems that we'll be covering today, as well as information on the Reveal Print Perfect 600T. So you might have noticed I have made a few videos over the course of time for Conde TV. So if you've seen this face on a video before, that's how you can make the association. As far as this presentation is concerned, this is an educational presentation, so that I hope that everyone who attends today's webinar will learn more about digital decorating methods than what they did previously. But like I said, as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, we'll give you the opportunity to contact us and give you the resources where you can hunt down additional information on this topic. So we'll go ahead and get started. Conde Systems, in conjunction with the NBM shows, National Business Media, and Conde TV, would like to welcome you to today's webinar presentation of Will Digital Transfer Systems Make Direct-to-Garment Obsolete? First, let's go ahead and cover the rules for today's presentation. This presentation is going to focus on dark garment production methods, the decoration of textiles by existing digital printing methods that are in the market right now. Please understand that the information that I originally gathered for this presentation was compiled February 2018. I did do an update to this presentation in November 2018 to include additional information on new products that have just hit the market. Understand that I gathered all information from vendor specifications. This presentation, again, is for education purposes only. And also, please understand that the views expressed in this presentation may not reflect the views and opinions of Conde Systems Incorporated or other vendors mentioned in this presentation. So in other words, this is an educational presentation, and the opinions that I give are truly my own. So when we're talking about dark garment apparel decoration, what we really need to do is compare and contrast the 4 existing methods in the market that are used for either volume production or short production runs. Now, most people are going to be familiar with traditional screen printing equipment, and we will touch on screen printing equipment briefly because it is the standard bearer, so to speak, when you're talking about the volume production of dark garments. Now, when it comes to individual production of garments or small production runs, at the moment, the direct-to-garment systems are king, so to speak. They are the most prevalent form of digital decorating once you get beyond screen printing. However, there is some competition that is coming the way of the direct-to-garment systems. You have the OKI data, white toner printers, as well as some other model white toner printers that are hitting the market. Very interesting machines. We will go into some details on exactly how those operate, but understand for this presentation, we're going to feature the OKI models because OKI is probably the main manufacturer in the market when it comes to a white toner color laser printer system. We're also going to give some information on the Reveal Print Perfect system. Now, what we've got to understand about the Reveal Print Perfect system is this system is still kind of a work in progress system. So we're going to detail what the system can do at the moment and then the future plans for what the system should be able to achieve within the next few months. Some innovations that are coming down the pipeline from Vivid Chemical, who is the manufacturer of the Print Perfect ink and the Reveal transfer films, which are single sheet self-weeding transfer films. So let's go ahead and begin comparing and contrasting these systems by first touching on screen printing. Now, screen printing, we're talking about a stencil method of basically forcing liquid ink through a mesh screen and applying this wet ink onto a garment in separations. In other words, applying one process color at a time and layering our design until we have a completed graphic. An interesting fact, the origins of screen printing can actually be traced back to the Song dynasty in China. So when we're talking about screen printing, we are literally talking about a technology that has existed for over 1,000 years. Now, there have been some updates into how screen printing is actually handled, so let's go ahead and tackle that. This slide here presents a basic workflow on how modern screen printing works. Of course, what we're doing is we are taking our design and using our computer and graphic software. We have to take that full color design and break that design into what are known as print separations, which are the individual process colors that once layered upon one another will create your final graphic. Once we have our separations printed, we usually start by printing a separation onto a transparency film or a vellum, and we are printing a negative of our separation. We take that negative and we take a chemically treated screen and we emulsify the screen, so to speak, which is basically blocking off areas where we do not want ink to flow through and allowing areas to stay open where ink needs to pass. So we have to create a screen, one for every process color. Once we have our screens created, we then load the screens into our screen printing equipment. Once we have our screens loaded, now we have to mix our inks. For those of you who are not familiar with Pantone color matching, this is where Pantone color matching comes into play. The main purpose of the Pantone color matching system is to allow screen printers to identify which colors and concentrations of inks that they need to mix in order to create a specific process color. So in other words, if we've got a 4-color separation, we have to mix up our 4 inks to create that separation. Once we have our inks mixed, we go ahead and we load the inks into our screens. At that point, we are taking our blank garment, we are putting it through the hoop of our screen printing equipment, and then we go to step 8, which is physically forcing ink through the screen onto the garment. And we do that however many number of process colors are required to create the final graphic. Once the final graphic is created, understand that the ink on the garment is wet, so we have to cure or dry those inks. And most screen printers basically use a conveyor dryer to heat set their inks onto their garment, creating their finished design. When it comes to screen printing equipment should have these 4 basic components: an exposure unit, a manual press, a conveyor dryer, and a flash cure unit. So the question we need to ask is, what type of initial investment are we looking at for what I would call manual screen printing equipment? I went ahead and took the liberty of researching what I would consider to be three main suppliers of screen printing equipment in the United States: Atlas Screen Supply, Lawson Screen and Digital, and RineNet. Now understand, there are other distributors and other manufacturers out there in the market. I chose these three because these three seem to be the most common in the searches that I ran on getting started with screen printing equipment. So what I did was I took their information on what is considered their startup manual screen printing systems that contain those four basic components. And as you can see, the setups of each system are going to vary depending on any accessories or any starter inks or chemicals or other equipment that a manufacturer wants to provide. But looking at the slide here, what you basically get a handle of is to get started in screen printing equipment, you're looking at an initial investment on the low end of about $5,000, on the high end of about $20,000. Now again, this is investment just in equipment. It doesn't cover all the other items that you need to ultimately make your finished decorated garment. But I wanted to give you an idea of what type of investment it takes to get started in screen printing equipment. Now, when it comes to screen printing is going to have some built-in advantages that the digital systems that are currently on the market, the DTGs, the OKIs, and the Reveal Print Vertex system, are going to have a hard time matching. And the main advantage of screen printing equipment is screen printing is set up for volume production. In other words, when you have to take a single graphic and reprint that graphic over hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of garments. The thing about screen printing that we have to understand is all of our initial cost in setting up our screen printing equipment in order to produce our run of t-shirts or decorated garments, all of our production costs are basically up front at the beginning, doing our screen separations, burning our screens, mixing our inks. In other words, the investment that we have to make before we're able to produce one t-shirt. Well, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it takes $500 in order to set up all of our equipment and all of our process to make that first t-shirt. Well, the first t-shirt that comes off your screen printing equipment is obviously a $500 t-shirt. The second shirt that comes off is $250. If 10 shirts come off, it's $25 a shirt. If 100 shirts come off, $2.50. You see where I'm going here. We can amortize our initial cost of setting up our screen printing equipment over the production run or the number that we need to generate. So generally speaking, the bigger the number we need to run, the lower our overall cost per garment is. Another thing we have to understand is screen printing is a recognized decoration method. In other words, when the average consumer goes to the retail mall or orders decorated garments online, what we've got to understand is about 90% of the garments that are ordered online or that you would find at a retail establishment were made with screen printing equipment. Why? Because we're talking about volume production. So screen printing is a look and feel that the public has basically learned to accept over the course of the hundreds of years that screen printing has been available. Now, because screen printing has been around so long, there is a vast equipment and supply network when it comes to screen printing equipment. The joke I like to make is we can step outside, throw a rock in any direction, and odds are we would hit a screen print distributor or reseller. So there's plenty of opportunity out there if you want to get into screen printing. There's also the variety of inks that screen printing equipment can use. So in other words, we're not just basically limited to your standard plastisol inks for cotton garments. There are inks that are specialized for polyesters. There are metallic inks. There are neon inks. All different variety of inks that can be loaded into our screen printing equipment to tackle unique jobs that we may get from our clients. So as far as being able to decorate, we've got lots of flexibility, so to speak, as far as the color palettes or the types of inks that we can use in our screen printing equipment. Now, beyond the vast equipment and supply network, That also means there's plenty of education and support out there if you want to get yourself up to speed on how to screen print. Remember, this is an established printed technology, so there's going to be vast amounts of education, vast amounts of resources available to get you up to speed. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the disadvantages of screen printing, especially when we're comparing screen printing to digital printing systems. In other words, since screen printing was set up for volume production, it really does not apply for custom jobs or small production runs. And the way that we've seen the market trending over the past few years, it's turning more and more into what I'll call an Amazon or Walmart world, where not only can people demand personalized products, but they expect to get them immediately, or at least within a couple of days. So that type of environment doesn't necessarily lend itself well to screen printing applications. However, digital decorating systems, which can pretty much generate an image instantaneously, is much more suited for custom or small production runs. When it comes to screen printing, my main issue is the chemical storage and disposal. When we're dealing with screen printing equipment, especially the chemicals that we're using to emulsify screens, we're dealing with some pretty gnarly chemicals. You have to have proper chemical storage and chemical disposal. If you do not, that brings me to my next point, OSHA regulations. The Occupational Safety and Hazard Arrangement here, or OSHA. OSHA, when it comes to screen printing, OSHA regulates screen printing very heavily. So like I said, you've got to have proper chemical storage and proper chemical disposal. If you don't, and OSHA happens to show up at your company and inspect, they will put the padlock on the door if you don't have proper chemical storage and disposal. So you definitely want to make yourself aware of any type of OSHA regulations before you get involved with screen printing. Then there is the physical chore of ink mixing. The nice thing about having a digital decoration system like a direct-to-garment system or an OKI system is we don't have to mix colors by hand. Basically, the printer is doing that for us. But when it comes to screen printing, if you want a particular process color, you got to know how to mix it up. Another tricky avenue could be screen registration. And what we mean by screen registration is as we take our individual screens of ink and we drop them on our t-shirt to start layering our design, the screens have to line up exact. If they do not line up exact, basically we create a skew or a ghost image within the design, and ultimately you end up ruining the t-shirt. So screen registration is important. And also understand that screen printing equipment takes up a lot of space. It's not something that you want to start out of your garage. You need an actual workspace, like I said, with proper chemical disposal and drainage and things of that nature. So not something conducive to an in-home business. You need a dedicated workspace in order to operate screen printing equipment. There's the setup time involved with creating the screens in order to generate that first graphic. In other words, if you're going to use screen printing equipment to do your job, you have to have enough shirts in that production run to justify going through the expense of setting up screen printing equipment. We also have to be mindful of material content, because when it comes to screen printing inks, most inks are designed either to apply to 100% cotton, or they are designed to apply to synthetic materials, let's say for the sake of argument 100% polyester. Where that leaves us in the lurch, so to speak, is what if we're dealing with a cotton poly blend or a tri-blend material, which happens to be real popular these days. The situation that we fall into is we really don't have an ink that is effective for both tri-blends or 50-50 blends. So we're going to be losing some quality or some image depending on the ink that we select for those particular blends. You know, in other words, it would be nice if there was a specific ink for a blend garment, but you really just don't find that on the market. Of course, we've also got to properly store all the inks. So if we don't have proper storage, the inks go bad within their container, we're throwing ink out, we're throwing money away. There is the physical labor involved with producing screen printing and operating screen printing equipment. Now, there is automated screen printing equipment, which will take a lot of the labor out of the process, but understand that automated screen printing equipment is very expensive. And if we're talking about starting a business, we would have to lay down a significant investment to start with automated screen printing equipment. And if you're just starting out, never operating screen printing equipment before, going into automated equipment would be the equivalent of getting your commercial pilot's license and then jumping behind the joystick of an F-15. You know, in other words, you want to work your way up to automated screen printing equipment. Another downside of screen printing equipment is screen printing can have some struggles when it's trying to achieve photorealistic output. In other words, you've got to start out with a high resolution graphic and what they call an image setter, a high lines per screen or high dots per inch resolution printer in order to generate a negative where you can have the type of detail to do photographic output. There are some screen printers that are better at it than others, but when it comes to dealing with photographs or any kind of bitmap graphic, we're going to discover, and discover it soon, that digital units like direct-to-garment systems or OKI systems are much better suited for handling photographic output than screen printing equipment. There's also the limitation that most screen printing equipment does not work well on hard substrates. That's a completely different type of screen printing that is known as pad printing. It is available, but when we're talking about screen printing equipment, what we're talking about primarily is decorating fabric materials, not hard substrates. So now that we know what we are comparing these digital systems to, the traditional screen printing method, let's start talking about these unique systems. And the first ones we're going to touch on are, of course, what's dominating the market at the moment, the direct-to-garment printers. Think of a direct-to-garment printer as a giant inkjet printer, where instead of feeding in a paper sheet to print, you are physically putting the garment inside of the printer. So the way the direct-to-garment system operates is when the garment goes inside of the printer, there's usually a sensor to make sure that the print heads can pass over that material without striking the material. But just like your inkjet printer, we are either laying down 4-color process, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, or a 5-color process, white plus cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, in order to create our finished garment. Now, an interesting note when it comes to direct-to-garment systems. For those of you who may attend industry trade shows on a regular basis, you may have met a gentleman. He used to work for Brother. He now works for Epson. His name is Matthew Rome. If you ever get the opportunity to meet Matthew Rome, understand that you are meeting the gentleman who essentially invented the direct-to-garment printer. Mr. Rome was awarded the patent back in August of 2000, the first direct-to-garment printer manufactured. So basically, Matt Rome is the founder of direct-to-garment printing technology, just so you know. On this slide, we're going to talk about the workflow associated with a direct-to-garment system. Now, the workflow we're going to detail is the workflow for a direct-to-garment system that is using white ink as part of its process color. If we are using a standard 4-color process, DTG, the workflow is a much more simple process. But let's kind of detail what's involved with creating a design on a dark garment using a white ink-based direct-to-garment system. The first thing we have to do is we have to take our blank t-shirt and we have to put it in a pre-treatment machine to apply a chemical pre-treatment to the garment. What the chemical pre-treatment does, in essence, it's a treatment that helps keep the ink at the surface of the garment as opposed to allowing that liquid ink to be absorbed by the cotton fiber. Why is that important? Because if the ink were allowed to absorb in the cotton, we would have to lay down numerous passes of white ink and color ink in order to make the graphic opaque enough to stand against its dark background. So without the pre-treatment process, essentially direct-to-garment printing is too expensive to do on its own. So we have to chemically pre-treat our garments, and this chemical pre-treatment is usually required to be set by a heat press, applying both heat and pressure to the garment to set the chemical pre-treatment. So once we have our shirt pre-treated, we put it inside of a heat press to set that pre-treatment into the material. Once we have our pre-treated garment, we can go ahead and get on our computer, manipulate our graphic with our graphic software, and then send the graphic to our direct-to-garment printer. We will then take our pre-treated garment and we will load it inside of the direct-to-garment printer. Now, depending on how the direct-to-garment printer is set up, what they usually do is lay down the white ink first, because the white ink is acting as the opaque layer that all the color inks are going to stand against, since we're going against a dark garment. So we lay down the white ink, we lay down the color ink over the top, and once the printer is finished, it will eject the garment out of the printer, and we will have our finished design, or at least our finished printed design, on the garment. But what we've got to understand is that ink is wet. The trickiest part, in my opinion, is removing the shirt from the direct-to-garment hoop or platen and placing it either in a heat press or on your conveyor dryer without disturbing the graphic on the surface. If the shirt happens to fold over, so to speak, as you're moving that wet image off of the DTG and onto your heating element, at that point you've pretty much ruined the shirt. You'll have to put it in the trash can, you'll have to get another pre-treated shirt and try again. But if we don't disturb the image, when it comes to heat setting direct-to-garment inks, most direct-to-garment inks can be heat set with either a conveyor dryer or using a commercial heat press. So now that we have a basic understanding of the workflow involved with a direct-to-garment system incorporating a white ink, let me take this opportunity to give you an overview of some of the models that are currently on the market. One of the more popular models are the AnaJet models. Now, just so you know, AnaJet was recently purchased by Ricoh. So now Ricoh is the parent company of AnaJet. And when it comes to AnaJet, their larger models are known as the RI1000 and the RI6000 direct-to-garment systems. Both of these systems have a standard 14-inch by 18-inch maximum print area. The main difference is the cartridge configuration. When you have an RI3000, you have 6 ink channels: cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus 2 channels of white. With the RI6000, that's double. So you've got 2 cyan, 2 magenta, 2 yellow, 2 black, 4 white. Why would you want those extra lines and ink channels? For speed. When it comes to the speed of this unit, if we're doing a draft print, which is setting the unit in its lowest resolution, we can produce a graphic in about 30 seconds. If we set it to its fine detail resolution, then it's going to take about 1 minute and 40 seconds to produce a print onto your dark garment. These AnaJets have 4 resolution settings, maximum setting being 600 by 600 dpi. What makes the AnaJet unique is their inks will not only work on 100% cotton, their inks, as advertised, claim to work on cotton blends, as well as 100% light polyester and some wood products. Now, as far as the wood is concerned, you might need to ask, is that coated or uncoated wood? I'm assuming either would be sufficient. But one thing that make Ricoh's unique is that their ink formulation will allow it to do other materials or substrates that other direct-to-garment systems do not advertise that you do. Like most direct-to-garment systems, it has a sensor table height of about 2.3 inches thick, which is the maximum thickness we can send through. It will have a sensor inside the machine where if we put something in too thick, the sensor will recognize it. It'll eject the product or the media out so that we can try again. As far as direct-to-garment systems are concerned, one thing that we're going to notice is the operating conditions of direct-to-garment systems. Operating conditions are important because we are dealing with a system that delivers liquid ink. So we have to be mindful. When it comes to the operating conditions of the AnaJet, we want to be in a climate-controlled environment somewhere between 60 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit with a relative humidity between 45 to 80%. Relative humidity is important. If the humidity is too low, the inkjet printer may not produce or may not print with the proper volume of ink it needs to properly decorate the garment. If the humidity is too high, it could basically lay down too much ink. So we definitely have to be mindful of relative humidity. When it comes to the AnaJets, they will support USB 2.0 connection. They also have Ethernet connection, so we can network it if necessary. When it comes to the AnaJet models, they're only Windows supported. So if you're on a Mac environment, you may have to look for a different solution than an AnaJet. But when it comes to the file types, it'll support native Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or CorelDRAW files, as well as all of your standard bitmap files. As far as the unit itself is concerned, you're looking at a unit that weighs in at about 180 pounds, and depending on the configuration, between $16,000 to $20,000 initial investment. Now understand that that price does not include your pre-treatment machine, inks, or any other supplies that you would need to get up and running. As an amendment to this presentation, AnaJet has recently introduced a new model to the US market, what they call their AnaJet RI1000. The best way I could describe this unit, it is like their larger brothers, the 3000 or the 6000, but essentially this unit has an 8.3 by 11.7, what we call an A4 size printing platform. This unit was originally introduced in Europe and is now being brought over to the United States. But what makes it nice is it's a very compact machine. So if you don't need to print big designs and you're looking to get started, as far as the DTG realm is concerned, this would be a nice unit to kind of get started, kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, on how to operate a direct-to-garment system. My understanding is that the pre-treatment should also be built into this particular system, which would make it nice. But again, it falls under the same constraints of all the other Ricoh AnaJet units as far as the operating conditions. This unit is unique in the fact that it will operate on a Mac OS system, but again, handles most of your supported bitmap files. The unit should be in the market soon if it's not available already. The next set of direct-to-garment printers that I want to touch on are the Brother series of printers. What makes the Brother series unique is that the Brother series can be ordered in 3 configurations. What they call the GT341, which is standard 4-color process, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. You can get a 361, which is your standard 4-color process plus 2 channels of white, or the GT381, which is your standard 4-color process and 4 channels of white. What makes the Brother unique is that the units can be reconfigured over the course of time. So in other words, you could start out with a 341 model, and if you want to upgrade your model to a 61 or an 81, basically Brother comes out with a technician and they install the extra lines and the extra cartridge housing, and boom, now you've got a system that can run white ink. So you could start out with a standard 4-color process and upgrade down the road if you choose. As far as the print speed on the Brother is concerned, all 3 units are pretty much going to be uniform in print speed. In order to generate a 10-inch by 8-inch graphic, anywhere from 1 minute 20 seconds if you're not using white to 2.5 minutes if you are laying down white plus your other process colors. The Brother GT3 series only has 2 resolution settings, but will go up to a 1200 by 1200 dots per inch image resolution. Brother advertises that their inks are for 100% cotton. They say you can try to use their inks on other material, but they can't guarantee the success if you use a different material than 100% cotton. It has a platen height sensor like most other direct-to-garments, but what makes the Brother inks unique is that the Brother inks are CPSIA compliant. This is the Consumer Product Safety Information Act. And basically what this means, it's certification that Brother inks have no leads or phthalates. Where that is important is if you are producing decorated garments for babies, toddlers, or children under the age of 12. If you're in California, it's what they refer to as Proposition 65. But CPSIA is important if you are considering a business model where you are going to be decorating garments for children. If that is your business model, you want to give a serious look at the Brother DTG, just because we are dealing with an ink that is safe enough to be used on kids' clothing. Again, we have to be mindful of the operating conditions, not only the temperature, but relative humidity. The Brother units will have a USB or Ethernet connection, and they are both Windows and Macintosh compatible. Like the other units, it can handle native files from Adobe Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, Illustrator, Corel Draw, or Corel Paint Shop Pro. The units have a 2-year limited warranty, a 1-year warranty on the print head. As far as the printer is concerned, it weighs in at about 250 pounds, and depending on the configuration of your Brother GT3 series, you're looking at an initial investment between $20,000 to $25,000. Again, that does not cover your other equipment, such as your pretreatment machine, your conveyor dryer, or heat press, whatever you choose to use to heat set the inks. The last direct-to-garment system that we're going to discuss is the brand new Epson Surecolor F2100 series. In my opinion, the Epson models of direct-to-garments are the ones that are really kind of taking over the DTG market. What makes the Epsons unique from the other units is that we can go a little bigger on the print size, standard print size of 14-inch by 16-inch, but there are optional platens where we can go as large as 16-inch by 20-inch. So if your market is catering to, let's say, like big and tall clothing, it's a good unit to have, because when we're talking about other digital printing systems, you know, we might be talking about a maximum 11-inch by 17-inch print area, where on most size garments it looks fine, but as you start to get into 2X, 3X, or 4X size garments in shirts, 11 by 17 can look small against that size garment. Having the ability to print 16-inch by 20-inch is pretty nice. As far as the nozzles are concerned, we've got 720 nozzles for the color, 1,440 nozzles for the white. As far as the speed is concerned, you know, about around the same as most of the other direct-to-garment systems. If you put it in draft mode or speed mode, it can produce a graphic in under a minute. If you put it in quality mode, you're looking at about 2.5 to 3 minutes for the graphic to be generated by this unit. It has 6 resolution settings, capable of up to 1440 DPI image resolution. As far as the Epson inks are concerned, they work great on 100% cotton, like most direct-to-garment inks do. They recommend upward to a 50-50 blend. Now, if you happen to be working with a material that is beyond 50% polyester, you might want to consider a different printing method. As far as the Epson printers are concerned, they have the platen height sensor like most other units, but what makes their unit unique is they were the first units to have what is basically called a, I guess, like a pumping or filtration system. In other words, a system designed within the direct-to-garment to keep the white ink continuously moving through the lines through the heads. We'll explain why this is important in a second. But as far as the Epson Surecolor is concerned, supports both Windows and Macintosh operating systems computers, supports most of your native bitmap files. The unit itself weighs in at about 180 pounds, comes with a 1-year warranty, and something new that Epson has come out with is a specialized pre-treatment to work with their inks on 100% polyester items. So now, if you use a different pre-treatment, you have the ability to use an Epson Surecolor F2100 DTG on 100% polyester garments. As far as the price tag on one of these units, you're looking at about $18,000 retail price. So now that we've covered the predominant direct-to-garment systems that are out there on the market, and believe me, there are others, you can shop around at your leisure, let's start by addressing what I feel are the advantages of a direct-to-garment system over not only screen printing, but the OKI systems and the Reveal Print Perfect systems. Because we are dealing with a liquid ink coming out of the direct-to-garment system, the first thing you're going to notice with the garment is the color vibrancy of a liquid ink. In other words, if we take a graphic generated with a direct-to-garment system and a same graphic on an OKI White Toner system, because the DTG uses liquid ink and the OKI system uses dry toner, the liquid ink is just going to have more vibrancy, more pop when that shirt is first generated. And of course, when we're handing these shirts to our clients, we're handing an unwashed shirt, usually speaking. So we want that design to be as vibrant as we can. And direct-to-garment systems definitely deliver in the area of color vibrancy. I think another advantage of direct-to-garment systems is that certain manufacturers have inks that are CPSIA or OKI compliant. And again, this comes down to if the business model that we're trying to employ is decorated garments that are intended for children. If this is your particular business model, I would give direct-to-garment systems a serious look. Another nice area of advantage is the printable area of these direct-to-garment systems. Just about every one that we featured is capable of at least 14-inch by 16-inch print area. Some can go upwards to 16-inch by 20-inch. So if we need to print to larger materials or bigger garments, it's nice to have that additional print size. Also, there's the material thickness that these units can handle, especially when we're talking about a fabric that has any kind of raised area, like a zipper running down the middle, or maybe a pocket for a hoodie. When it comes to systems that rely on transfer paper, like the OKI or like the Reveal system, transfer paper is going to have a difficult time setting its emulsion into cracks and crevices, such as, down the seam of a zipper. Or if we've got an uneven fabric layer, like trying to go over the pocket of a hoodie, we are probably going to see some type of break line if we use a transfer system like an OKI or a Reveal. But if we have a system that can pass over those cracks and crevices and lay down an even layer of ink, like a direct-to-garment system can do, I just think it's the better option whenever we're dealing with raised areas of a fabric, like a zipper or a hoodie pocket. Now, another nice feature is, since we're printing directly to the material itself, we're not involving paper use. So in other words, if you're environmentally conscious, so to speak, and you're making a concerted effort to reduce the amount of waste that you're putting out there into the environment, it is nice in the fact that these systems do not involve paper, so you're not filling up your trash can, you're not filling up your landfill, so to speak. But then again, paper decomposes, so hopefully we're not harming the environment anyway, whether we use paper or not. But again, it's another step that we can avoid. Anytime that we can go directly onto a medium, we reduce the risk of making a mistake to that medium. So being able to go straight to the fabric is pretty nice. And again, since we're talking about producing one garment at a time, this unit works just fine when you're talking about custom jobs or small production runs. Where you do not want to use a direct-to-garment for is volume production, especially if we're talking about the same graphic over multiple garments, that screen printing. Another nice feature of direct-to-garment systems is most direct-to-garment systems, their ink cartridges are going to hold a uniform amount of ink, and they're going to be a uniform price. Most direct-to-garment systems will calculate how much ink it is going to use to generate that graphic. So if your direct-to-garment system can calculate the amount of ink used to generate a graphic, and you know the volume and the cost of your cartridges, it's very easy to calculate an exact cost per print using a direct-to-garment system. And if you're going to profit with the system, the first thing you have to know is your cost going in. So now that we've covered what I think are the selling points of direct-to-garment systems, let's talk about the disadvantages that I feel are inherent with direct-to-garment systems. And the main disadvantage that I see is we're running a white ink. All white ink is made with an element called titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide, if left sitting, will congeal, which forms clogs. either in the lines, the ink lines that feed the print heads, or the print heads themselves. Mentioned earlier in the presentation about the Epson direct-to-garment systems, basically putting in an agitation pump into their print lines. This is the reason. It's to keep that white ink moving through the system to reduce clogging. But what I can say is, even with some of these pumping systems, you still run the risk of having the lines clog if you have any inactivity with the white lines of your DTG system. In other words, it doesn't matter what brand of ink or what the ink manufacturer is, all white ink is pretty much manufactured the same way, and until they invent a new element that doesn't clog, white ink is going to clog. The other downside to direct-to-garment printing is that it does require pre-treatment. We do have to chemically treat our garments before we can apply the ink with our direct-to-garment system. So if we're having to apply a chemical pre-treatment, we're having to apply that pre-treatment in a uniform manner if we want a uniform design on our garment. In other words, if we have uneven pre-treatment, we're going to have an uneven design, so to speak. And just from dealing with people that I have over the past 25 years, it always amazes me from time to time how somebody can go out and spend $20, $30, $40, $50,000 on a high-end direct-to-garment system, yet they will try to go cheap or skimp when it comes to the pre-treatment method that they're using. Think of it as if you're going to own a sports car, you need sports performance tires. You cannot bring your ride into Walmart and tell them, put the cheapest tires you've got. You're not going to get the performance. So pre-treatment and direct-to-garment operation really go hand in hand. If you don't have good pre-treatment, it doesn't matter how expensive your direct-to-garment system is, you're not going to get good results. So one of the things you're going to have to learn if you get involved with a direct-to-garment system is how to apply even pre-treatment to your garments. There is the issue of dealing with polyester or other synthetic fabric materials. Now, it seems that direct-to-garment manufacturers, either through their inks or through their pretreatment, are starting to address the issues of printing to polyester. And the reason that they're doing this is because, one, sublimators can do it with ease, but two, it's all the sports performance clothing that is starting to take over the market, so to speak. So if you're going to address things, if you're going to decorate things such as, yoga pants and bicycle jerseys and things of that nature, you've got to learn how to basically print to polyester. Now, while direct-to-garment systems are making strides toward that, the ink formulations for most direct-to-garment systems do not lend themselves well to synthetics. Just about every direct-to-garment ink was designed to decorate 100% cotton. So the more polyester content that you have in your material, odds are that ink isn't going to hold, and you're going to see image degradation at a rapid rate once that garment starts to be washed and dried. There's the daily and weekly maintenance that is involved with direct-to-garment systems, and that's mainly dealing with the white ink if you happen to have a system that runs white ink to decorate dark garments. Now, how often do you have to clean out your white lines and white print heads? Well, that depends. If you are running your unit 24/7, 365, the answer is never. But if you have periods of inactivity with your white ink inside the line, then the maintenance is really about every day. And as far as the maintenance involved, it's basically you command your direct-to-garment printer to back the white ink out of the lines, back into the cartridges. You physically remove the cartridges from the unit, you install cleaning cartridges, and you run cleaning solution through your white lines, through your white print heads. After enough cleaning solution is passed, you dump the cleaning solution, you physically agitate the white ink cartridges. In other words, you got to shake up your white ink cartridges like you shake up white latex paint at, your local hardware store. You agitate the white cartridges, you plug the white ink cartridges back in, and you reintroduce the white ink back into the lines through the print heads. This definitely needs to be done, in my opinion, every day, unless you are operating your direct-to-garment system where it does not stop. I would say a happy DTG is one that is constantly printing. A DTG that sits idle is the devil's workshop. So what we got to consider is we're limited in applications. In other words, we can go on to fabric materials, but what about other substrates? Maybe decorating things such as leather or plastics, metal, wood, ceramics. Not in the wheelhouse of what a direct-to-garment system can do. Their inks are designed to decorate fabrics. So you are limited in fabric decoration when you're looking at a direct-to-garment system. And then there's what I feel the return on investment. If you are looking at a direct-to-garment system that is running a white ink, it's pretty much a given that you're going to be looking at least $15,000 minimum to get a direct-to-garment system that is running a white ink. How many individual or custom-run t-shirts do you have to sell to recoup that $15,000 investment? And again, that's just in the printer itself. That's not in the pre-treatment or the heating elements or anything else required to create a finished product with a direct-to-garment system. Here at Conde, what we feel is a better solution, especially for smaller businesses, are the OKI White Toner printers. Now, at the moment, there are 4 OKI White Toner models available in the US. The OKI C711WT, which is a letter size printer, the OKI Pro 6410 Neon, which is letter size, but with fluorescent toners inside. So if you need to produce a glow-in-the-dark design to a dark garment, 6410 is your model. There is the Pro 8432WT, which is the tabloid size model, which replaced the C920WT. But it turns out that OKI has brought back that 900 series engine. They have added true 5-color process printing, and that is now available in the brand new unit that they have called the Pro 9541WT. And as a side note, the 9541WT is a tabloid plus size printer, meaning it's capable of feeding up to a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet media. Now, a fun fact about the OKI White Toner systems. The OKI White Toner systems years ago were originally designed for stationary printing. However, there wasn't a lot of success selling the initial units into the stationary market because when you're talking about a white toner printer for stationary printing, white needs to be the first color down. When the first white toner systems from OKI were available, white was the last color down, not the first. So it didn't necessarily lend itself well to the stationary market. However, to the t-shirt transfer market, having the white laid down as the last color is a significant advantage to using the self-weeding papers that were on the market to create a white end color design on a dark garment that we didn't have to cut or trim. Long story short, what initially ended up as an engineering mistake at first with OKI has basically now become one of OKI's biggest money makers. They now have a heat textile printer division within OKI that does nothing but manufacture these units that are dedicated to the digital decoration market. OKI is the first major laser printer manufacturer to basically have an offshoot or an arm specifically designed for this industry, which is nice, having a manufacturer come in, so to speak, and stand behind a laser product. So like I said, what basically started out as a oopsie at OKI is now their biggest moneymaker. Go figure. Here, let's go ahead and take the opportunity to discuss the workflow with using an OKI Data white toner printer or just about any other brand white toner printer in order to create a design onto a dark garment. We're taking our design on our computer using our graphic software to manipulate the design, and then we are going to send that design to our white toner printer. Now, the white toner printer we are going to load with a t-shirt transfer paper. Now, the most common method as far as a self-weeding paper is concerned is a transfer product that uses 2 separate sheets. What I'm going to call an imaging sheet or a sheet, which is what physically feeds through the printer to capture the toner, and a B sheet or an emulsion sheet, which takes an emulsion, in layman's terms, basically an opaque base glue, bonds it to the toner using a heat press under heat and pressure in step 4. When we remove the two sheets, the emulsion only sticks to the printed toner. That is the beauty of this process. In other words, back in the old days, we would have to print a design onto a white film and then physically cut away excess white material that we did not want to lay down on the garment, usually involving an optical cutter or a vinyl cutter if you wanted to get fancy. But pick and weeding opaque transfers is kind of like picking and weeding vinyl. It can get real tiresome. But having a self-weeding paper that applies a white-based emulsion only where there's printed toner, it means at this point we can grab our t-shirt. And what's nice about this process is we're not pre-treating the t-shirt. We can literally grab the t-shirt right out of its case box, lay the t-shirt onto a heat press, preferably a swing away, whether it's a manual or air-operated swing away, but swing aways work best for this process. We lay down our t-shirt, we lay down our weeded transfer with the emulsion over the shirt. We press at a certain temperature, time, and pressure. When it's done, we remove the shirt, we remove the backing sheet from the garment, and we should have just our design on the garment. In other words, a screen printed effect done with a digital transfer. So now, let's take a moment to cover some of the OKI White Toner printer models that are currently available here in the US. The starter model is what I would refer to as the C711WT White Toner printer. It is using 4 process colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, and white. We'll notice that when it comes to black, it uses what's called process black, which is mixing cyan, magenta, and yellow in order to create black. Now, what we have to understand is a process black is not going to be the same as true black. So the real strength of these OKI systems, at least when it comes to a 3-color plus white process, is going on to dark garments. How often do you print black on black? As far as its ability to produce transfers, if we were to load transfer paper into the printer is going to slow down from the normal speed that it would use to print to, let's say, regular copy bond paper. It does take a little bit more time and a little bit more heat to properly bond toner to transfer papers. But even when we slow the printer down, we can still produce about 8 letter-size transfers per minute with this system. The system has 3 print modes, up to a 1200 by 600 dpi image resolution. The printer will come with its own internal processor and its own internal memory, which can be upgraded. These printers are going to be both USB and Ethernet supported. They have what's called PostScript 3 emulation, which is the machine language that the printer uses to translate your graphic into a dot pattern to replicate your graphic onto your paper or material. So if you've got a unit that's running PostScript level 3 emulation, what it basically means is it should be compatible with just about any graphic software application that you choose to use. The printers are going to be both Windows and Macintosh compatible. Of course, it has separate trays, a multi-purpose tray where you would feed your transfer paper through, and a cassette tray at the bottom, which is basically designed for your bond paper. Now notice here, when it comes to an OKI White Toner system, it has environmental requirements just like a direct-to-garment system does. But also notice we've got a wider temperature range and a much wider humidity range when it comes to operating an OKI as opposed to a direct-to-garment system. Why is that? Because dry toner is not nearly as susceptible to environmental conditions as liquid ink that goes through a direct-to-garment system. You're also talking about a much smaller unit. This is a desktop unit that only weighs about 60 pounds. The printer comes with a 1-year on-site warranty and a 5-year warranty on its LED print heads. Now, when it comes to the type of materials that you can print to with an OKI or other white toner transfer system, that's going to be reliant on the transfer paper that you feed through. Understand there are transfer papers that are designed for light garments, for dark garments, for cottons, for blends, for polyesters, for hard substrates. There are even water slide materials. There are self-weeding vinyl materials that are out now. Of course, we can use foils if we want to. So all different types of printing methods that can be applied based on the type of transfer paper we decide to feed through our white toner color laser printer. The OKI C711WT starts at $3,395. Pardon the interruption. Needed a little bit of a refreshment break there. So now let's go ahead and talk about the next unit, the OKI Pro 6410 Neon White Toner Printer. Now this is going to be the same engine as the 711WT. The only difference is instead of having standard toners within the machine, you're going to have fluorescent toners in the machine. So a fluorescent cyan, fluorescent magenta, fluorescent yellow, and fluorescent white. So if we lay down those process colors with our transfer paper onto a dark garment, and we take that garment and we put it under a black light, the fluorescent toners will glow in the dark. So it's a unique feature of this particular printer. But as you'll notice, when it comes to the specifications, basically, it's the same specifications as the 711WT because it's built off the same engine as the 711WT. That being said, you cannot interchange cartridges or drums when it comes to these units, and it's due to the microchips that have to be recognized by the printer. So in other words, you got to put the right toner or right drum in the machine in order to get it to work. So do not buy 6410 consumables thinking that you can convert your 711WT into a fluorescent toner printer. You cannot. If you want the ability to print fluorescent, you have to acquire this model. Now, fortunately, it's not an expensive model. The 6410 Neon comes at an initial price tag of about $2,695. The next OKI unit we're going to talk about is their tabloid printer that replaced the 920WT predecessor last year. This is the OKI Pro 8432WT white toner printing. Like the other models, it is a 4-color process: cyan, magenta, yellow, and white. Like the other models, whenever you want to print black, it has to create process black. But this printer will handle a tabloid cut sheet, which is up to an 11-inch by 17-inch cut sheet. And when we select that size and we configure the unit for printing transfer media, it can still produce 9 to 10 tabloid transfers per minute. So these units will be able to print transfers much faster than you and I can possibly, press them on the garments. You'll also notice that when it comes to this printer, you're getting a more powerful processor, although you're still getting the same RAM configuration. You do have a slightly faster processor. Again, you have the PostScript 3 emulation, just like the other units. They're Windows and Mac compatible. Another nice feature of the 8432 is we can feed a slightly thicker paper material through these printers than we can the 711 or the 6410. This printer can actually handle up to a 256 gram per square meter media weight. It comes with a 2-year on-site warranty from OKI, as well as a 5-year warranty on their LED print heads. And again, as far as the material or the substrate that we decide to decorate, that's going to depend on the transfer paper that we use. The latest OKI to hit the market, which was introduced this past year at the SGIA show in Las Vegas and is now available through distribution. Conde is a distributor for this unit, by the way. This is the brand new OKI Pro 9541WT. This unit is based off of the 900 series print engine. In other words, a print engine that was designed to be a network printer. So it has a very robust print engine. And of course, that allows faster speed. even if we are firing a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet media through this printer, we can still print at 12 pages per minute tabloid plus size. We'll also notice that we are dealing with a faster processor, a 1.2 gigahertz processor, as well as 2 gigabytes of internal RAM memory. There is the option to add an external hard drive to this unit should you choose. But like all the other OKI units, it's going to be USB and Ethernet connected, PostScript 3 emulation, Windows and Mac compatible. But we'll notice that its multi-purpose tray can handle up to 300 sheets of media and can run up to a 360 gram per square meter media weight. Now, to relate that in terms of transfer paper, I have never encountered any transfer paper that weighs 360 grams per square meter. So while we are still testing this unit internally, I can say with confidence that it should be able to run any transfer paper on the market that is designed for a color laser printer or a color laser copier. But the one thing to notice here also, it is a much larger unit than the 8432. The 8432 is a desktop printer that weighs about 80 or 90 pounds. This unit weighs 244 pounds. Believe me, I think OKI might have fudged the number there. It's probably a little heavier than that, and it is going to take up an entire table. So kind of like its direct-to-garment competition, size-wise, it does take up some space. So if you're limited shop space, it's something that you probably need to consider. But like a lot of the other OKI models, it comes with a 2-year on-site warranty. And the nice thing about having an on-site warranty is it's not a situation where if something goes horribly wrong with our OKI printer, that we're boxing it up, shipping it off to some depot, and at the mercy of the depot to repair our unit. If need be, OKI sends technicians to your shop or your facility to repair the unit on site. If the unit can be fixed on site, great. If not, OKI sends it off to their depot and they ship you a brand new replacement printer. So that basically covers the gist of the OKI on-site warranty. And like I said, most units are going to have the 2-year on-site warranty option from OKI. Warranties can be extended if you contact OKI Data Direct. And again, like all of these other white toner printing systems, its ability to do light garments, dark garments, different fabric materials, different material contents, coated or uncoated hard substrates, it's all depending on the transfer paper that you feed through the unit. Now, as far as these OKI Data printers are concerned, you're talking about a $13,000 system for the ability to print with 5 process colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, true black, plus white, in up to a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet format. So now that we've covered these OKI models, give me time to discuss what I feel are the advantages of OKI White Toner systems over their direct-to-garment printing counterparts. The main advantage is white toner does not clog, unlike liquid white ink. Another thing about toner is, unlike inks, inks are always going to have an expiration date. So if we don't use all the ink by the expiration date, the ink starts to go bad. And if the ink starts to go bad, it's going to have a tendency to congeal. And if the ink congeals in your lines or in your heads on your direct-to-garment system, you've got problems. When it comes to an OKI Data toner cartridge, a dry toner does not have an expiration date. So it means that when the cartridge is inside of the printer, you are going to use the toner in that cartridge until it physically runs out. If you have a replacement toner that's been sitting on your shelf for 5 years, when it's time to plug the replacement toner in and go, you plug the replacement toner in and you go. So I feel when you're dealing with white toner that doesn't clog, that never physically passes through the print head, and you're dealing with a toner that does not expire, in other words, you're going to get the full use out of your toner set, and we don't need pre-treatment, because basically think of it as the pre-treatment is already built into the transfer paper products that we're using. Direct to garments use pre-treatment. Transfers and OKI White Toner systems, we're using an emulsion paper, whether that emulsion is built into the imaging sheet that goes through the printer or whether that emulsion is on a separate sheet that we're using in a two-step process to create a self-weed design. Now, because we are using transfer papers that can be designed to work with not only 100% cotton garments, but blends and 100% polyester, essentially, it means we can decorate just about any type of fabric material that we're given. From my experience, I would say the two synthetic fabric materials you want to avoid with this printing process is if you have to decorate lycra or spandex. Simply put, they stretch too much, and the surface tension caused by overdue stretching is essentially going to crack the design on the surface. So I don't recommend it if you need a unit to, let's say, decorate swimwear. This is not the system for you. But for just about any other fabric material that you're given, you at least have the ability to decorate depending on the transfer paper you send through. Another nice feature is, since we're dealing with dry toners, not liquid ink, there is minimal maintenance involved with an OKI White Toner system as opposed to a direct-to-garment system, which is running white ink. If you've got a white ink DTG, you're going to have to clean it on a regular basis. If not every other day, at least every other day. When it comes to your laser printer, maybe you clean out your laser printer once a year, and the process takes about 5 minutes. And we've got it documented on Conde TV if you want to see it. But basically, as long as we keep the LED print heads clean and we keep the fuser assembly clean, which is simply running our transfer paper in the proper media type or media weight, then these units require very little, if any, maintenance. Another nice features, on-site warranty available from OKI. Always a benefit to be able to have the technician or the repairman come to you at your facility on your schedule to work on your equipment. From our experience here at Conde, having sold the 711WT, the 8432s, the 6410s, our track record on OKI maintenance calls where a technician is actually needed to go out to a client's facility and repair a unit, probably a little under 1%. So what I would consider a very acceptable rate as far as performance is concerned. When it comes to these white toner systems, there are third-party RIPs available to operate these systems. And a little later in the presentation, we'll kind of touch on the importance of using a RIP program. Whether you use an OKI system or another white toner system, if you use a direct-to-garment system, or if you opt for the Reveal system, you are going to have to work with a software RIP program. So you might as well go ahead and get familiar with that thought. But unlike a direct-to-garment system, we can use a white toner system for other laser printing functions. We could still feed color stationery through these printers and print onto colored stationery. We can print restaurant menus. We can print wedding invitations, business cards, all the features and functions that a laser printer normally handles. As far as what I feel are the disadvantages of these white toner systems, to me, the main disadvantage is the color vibrancy of the initial print. Like I said, if we're taking the same graphic and we print the same graphic onto the same type of dark garment, one done with a direct-to-garment system, one done with the OKI system, after initial printing, the direct-to-garment system is always going to look better because we're dealing with a liquid ink. We're dealing with a more color-vibrant ink. Toner, because it's dry, has a tendency to be a little muted. Now, that being said, I think a direct-to-garment print looks better than an OKI White Toner print when you first produce the print. Now, after you wash those garments a couple of times, in my opinion, it's difficult to tell the difference between the print generated with the OKI and the print generated with the direct-to-garment. Where I feel the OKI starts to have the advantage is once that garment has been washed multiple times. And that's simply because liquid ink is going to have a tendency to break down faster in the washer and dryer than when we're dealing with dry toner. So while we may not have the vibrancy of a direct-to-garment print initially, as that shirt becomes laundered, the image degradation, in my opinion, is less with an OKI system and a transfer paper than it is with a direct-to-garment system. Another disadvantage that I would say of the OKI systems is it's difficult to calculate your exact cost per print with an OKI system unless you have a third-party RIP software that has that function available. In other words, having a software program that knows exactly what percentages of cyan, magenta, yellow, and white, or processed black or true black, depending on your white toner model, that it's going to take to generate that print. In other words, how can you profit unless you know your exact cost? Which is another reason why a raster image processing or RIP software program is important for these white toner systems in order to generate and calculate your exact cost per print. Some other downsides of the OKI system, in my opinion, are the printing area compared to direct-to-garment systems. Like I said, the 9541, the brand new OKI unit, is capable of a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet media. But what we have to understand is we cannot print edge to edge with a laser printer. We're always going to have some margin. Usually, to be on the safe side, figure that margin to be about 1/4 of an inch. So if an OKI Data 9541 WT can run a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet, what you're really talking about is an image size of 12 3/4 by 18 3/4. So give yourself about 1/4 of an inch border, so to speak. Another disadvantage is, and this is what I think is a unique advantage of direct garment systems, there are third-party platens in order to print onto canvas or cloth shoes. And the example I always like to give is a Chuck Taylor Converse All-Star. Believe it or not, there is, I guess, like what we'll call a market, so to speak, for decorated shoes. And you will be amazed at the price that you can get from an online seller, so to speak, when you're talking about a pair of custom or decorated tennis shoes. So if that's your particular business model, you want to create custom decorated Chuck Taylor Converse All-Star shoes, you have to go with a direct-to-garment system. Do not try to use an OKI system and t-shirt transfers to decorate shoes. Simply put, it's just not going to work. So now we're going to take a few minutes to discuss the latest digital decorating system that is on the market. This is a system manufactured by Vivid Chemical that they call the Reveal Print Perfect 600T. Pardon me. What makes this particular system unique is it is inkjet based, but we are dealing with 6 primary process colors: our cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, plus a light cyan and light magenta. Where does that come into play? Photographic reproductions, especially when you're talking about flesh tone colors. Having a light cyan and a light magenta is going to deliver a much more accurate flesh tone than using standard 4-color process. But what's nice about this particular system is once it finally has evolved into its finished state, you're going to have one set of ink and you're going to have 3 different films: a self-weeding film for a white or light color garment, a self-weeding film to generate a white graphic to a dark garment, and a self-weeding film to generate a white and color graphic to the dark garment. What makes the Reveal system unique is that instead of having a 2-sheet process, it's a single sheet self-weeding system. And these transfers are designed to weed within 18 to 20 seconds. So basically, this is a unique system. So let's kind of get into the details of this system so we get a better understanding of how this system compares to both the OKI and direct-to-garments. And here we are at the Reveal Print Perfect 600T production workflow. As you can see, it's a much more simplified workflow than using an OKI system, a direct-to-garment system, or screen printing equipment. Basically, we're taking our digital design from our computer and we're sending that design to the Reveal Print Perfect system. Now, as far as the garment that we're going to decorate, it depends on the type of film that we feed through the system. But we take one of our 3 films, we feed it through the printer, we get our graphic mirror to reverse. We take our blank, uncoated, untreated garment. And our garment could be anywhere from 100% cotton to a cotton poly blend up to about 50-50. We lay the garment over our heat press. We put our reveal film over it. At this point, the critical step is the time, temperature, and pressure exerted by your heat press onto the transfer. But if everything is set up properly, you peel away the backing sheet hot after 18 or 20 seconds, and you've got your finished design on a cotton or cotton poly blend garment. So now let's talk about the specifications of the Reveal Print Perfect 600T. The printer used in this system is, of course, an Epson printer that they call their Surecolor P600. So as far as the printer is concerned, the printer only weighs in at 33 pounds, but it has 8 channels, 180 nozzles, capable of up to 5,760 by 1,440 dpi image printing. Now, while that might be a fine resolution for, let's say, like a photo paper, for the realm of t-shirt transfers, it's a little bit overkill. I want to say that when we operate a Reveal Print Perfect system, 1200 by 1200 dpi is more than adequate to do the job. But as far as the system is concerned, it's going to be for Windows-based operating systems. There is no Mac platform available. But as far as the printer is concerned, it uses very minimum power. Again, we have to be mindful of our operating conditions, not only our temperature and our relative humidity. As far as the warranty is concerned, there is a 1-year warranty on these systems through Conde, which is an authorized distributor. Now, what makes the Reveal Print Perfect system unique is we can see from the chart here, we've got our 6 primary process colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus light cyan and light magenta. Where you see the CW, that is your white channels. But what we got to understand is the Reveal Print Perfect system does not use a pigment white. It uses a clear white. And the key to the whole system is, since the clear white technically does not contain any pigment, there is nothing to clog the head, so to speak. But we spray the clear white ink onto the Reveal film. Once the Reveal film is set under heat and pressure with your press, the chemical reaction of the smart polymer coating on the Reveal film and the clear white ink from this system will turn those areas saturated with this system white. So in other words, the white doesn't take place inside of the printer. The white is actually taking place inside of your heat press, which is a pretty neat trick in order to print both white and color and reduce the risk of head clogs or nozzle clogs by running a pigmented white. So as far as the advantages that I see on the Reveal Print Perfect 600T system, it's a minimum equipment cost system to get into. If you are just getting into the digital decoration business and you are looking for a system to kind of cut your teeth on, so to speak, being able to get a system that can do a self-weeding transfer for under $2,000 is pretty neat. Understand that this is a turnkey system. You know, in other words, you've got specific inks, specific transfers, specific rip, color calibrated. Everything is designed to work in sync. Now, the nice part of that is it takes a lot of the thought process out of which paper do I use or how do I set up my printer. If there's a downside to that, it kind of limits you as far as the opportunities of what you can decorate. But we'll touch on that in a second. Because these designs or these transfers are basically designed to be applied within 18 to 20 seconds, you're talking about a pretty fast production time when it comes to physically pressing the designs onto your t-shirts or your garments. Where you might struggle is the actual print speed of the Epson Surecolor P600. It's going to take the printer about a minute and a half to produce a full bleed 13-inch by 19-inch print. But like I said, the application is one press with one sheet. And that sheet is available in a 13-inch by 19-inch cut sheet size, which is the maximum capability of this printer. Although this printer does have the option to use roll-fed media. So if Vivid Chemical ever decides to put their reveal films in roll form, yes, you could feed rolled material through this printer up to 13 inches wide. Because we are using 6 process colors, when it comes to the type of artwork that we're looking to reproduce, whether it's line art, clip art, or photographic reproductions, should be no problem with the 6-color process printer. We don't need pre-treatment because, again, we are using a transfer with an emulsion. In this case, the Reveal films with their smart coating polymer technology. So basically, we get the advantage of having that inkjet color vibrancy. We get the added advantage of using 6 process colors as opposed to 4 process colors in white. And we're dealing with a clear white, not a pigment white. The inks that were designed are what are known as reactive textile ink. In other words, the inks are designed primarily to work with 100% cottons. Again, we can use a cotton poly blend up to a 50-50, but understand the more cotton content you have in your material, the better the unit's going to perform. As far as what I see are the disadvantages of the Reveal Print Perfect 600T system at this very moment, is the fact that the system is not fully implemented. In other words, the only film that is really available at this moment is the Reveal S film, which is your self-wetting film designed to image a white or light color fabric material. Vivid Chemical has recently introduced the Reveal W film, which works with your clear white in order to produce a white graphic on a dark garment. They've recently released this film. However, as last time I checked, the film is only available in an 8.5 inch by 11 inch cut sheet size. The Reveal WC film, which is the film that will take a white and color design, is due out sometime this year, but in reality, it's a little behind schedule. Because we are dealing with a smart polymer coating, we got to understand that we cannot use a polyester or synthetic fabric material. The inks and the smart polymer coating were designed to bond to cottons, not polys. When it comes to using a Reveal Print Perfect system and using the Reveal line of films, the most critical thing about using Reveal films is the calibration of your heat press. Unlike a lot of other transfer papers, what I'm going to call the sweet spot on Reveal S, in other words, the temperature, time, and pressure range that you could be within tolerance-wise to get a successful transfer is much more narrow than the laser transfers that are available for the OKI. So when it comes to operating your heat press with a Reveal Print Perfect system, it requires much more precision. Again, we are dealing with liquid ink, so if we don't use them up immediately, inks will expire if left in the printer over the course of time. And like all other inkjet printing systems, the performance is directly related to the activity of the printer. The more you print with the system, the better it prints. Where do you start getting, clogged nozzles or maybe dropouts in the design? When you let an inkjet printer sit for a period of time. The fact that the unit is not Mac compatible. So if you're a Mac environment user and you will not switch into the PC world, I don't blame you, but understand this system is not going to be for you. The fact that we only have a 13-inch maximum width, which most DTGs can print wider, and that this unit at the moment has a limited distribution network. So now that we've compared and contrasted these 4 different printing methods for decorating a dark garment, let's take a few moments to discuss basically what these units have in common, so to speak, and the knowledge that you're going to need to acquire in order to operate any of these systems with any types of success. What I always try to forewarn people of when I give this presentation, I'm usually doing it at a trade show or at an event. And when people come by our booth and they, for instance, watch me demonstrate the Reveal Print Perfect system, or they watch me demonstrate the OKI White Toner system, I can make it look so easy. Well, the reality is it's not easy. The reason I can make it look easy is because I have probably ruined hundreds upon hundreds of shirts in order for me to perfect the process to try to teach you, to keep you from ruining hundreds and hundreds of shirts. But my point is, none of these printing technologies are going to be easy. They are going to take some amount of training and practice on your end in order to master these systems. Please do not have the impression that if you were to get one of these systems and set them up, the first shirt you produce with your system is going to be perfect. It's not. It's going to take some practice. But let me kind of go over some of the things you need to be aware of if you're looking at any of these systems. First, what I would advise that you do is you have to basically have a mastery of manipulating digital artwork, especially if you're dealing with graphic software programs such as Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, or Corel Draw. What we've got to understand about all these graphic application programs is that they were originally written under the assumption that you are going to send your output to a printer that uses cyan, magenta, yellow, black. What we've got to understand is if we have a system that can physically print white, like a direct-to-garment system, like the OKI White Toners, or the Reveal system, those systems recognize a white background. And what happens more often than not when people send you a graphic to reproduce, they send it to you as a JPEG. If the JPEG has a white background, your white toner printer or your white ink DTG is going to want to print a white box around your design. So no matter which one of these systems you decide to go with, one of the things you're going to have to learn in your graphic software application is how to remove a white background, or basically how to save a file with a transparent background. The best formats for that, in my opinion, is using PNG or PDFs. But understand that if we're going to have a system that prints with white, we have got to be able to dictate where white is applied and where white is not applied. If we can't do that, we're never going to be successful with these systems. The other thing that we have to understand is we are going to have to learn a raster image processing or RIP software program with either a direct-to-garment, OKI, or Reveal Print Perfect system. All of those systems are basically powered by software RIPs. The software RIPs are important because the software RIPs dictate where white is applied, how much white is laid down. They also have your color correction tools inside and your color profiles. So think of a RIP as basically an extended or more powerful print driver. But until you learn the features and functions of your particular RIP program, you're never going to be able to truly manipulate and master your output so that you're matching the right concentration for the right background of your fabric material. You know, in other words, we don't have to necessarily lay down as much white when we're printing to a light brown as we do when we're printing to solid black. And all of these things are controlled by your RIP program. So until you master the RIP program for your system, you are never going to truly master the system. Another thing that we have to be mindful of, depending on which system we ultimately choose, is what type of material content we are intending to decorate. Understand, screen printing, direct-to-garment systems, white toner systems like the OKI and the Reveal Print Perfects, all of those systems were designed to decorate 100% cotton garments. So if that's the main fabric material that you use in your business, you use cotton t-shirts and only cotton t-shirts, any of these systems will decorate a cotton t-shirt. Where things start to get tricky is if we start to have materials that are cotton and polyester or cotton and synthetic blends, like a 50-50 blend or a tri-blend. At that point, we are kind of in between, so to speak, the capabilities of screen printing inks and direct-to-garment inks. Understand that direct-to-garment inks are designed to decorate 100% cotton. When it comes to screen printing inks, we have inks that are specifically designed for cotton. We now have inks that are designed for polyesters. What happens when we have a material content that's half and half? basically we're going to have a jack of all trades situation. We're really not going to master anything. Also understand that the Reveal ink system is designed for 100% cotton. So you can go to a cotton poly blend to 50-50, but once you start getting into blends where we're using inks that are designed for cotton, those inks are going to hold up as long in the washer and dryer as if we had stuck with 100% cotton. Now, as far as the OKI is concerned, like I said, the OKI is relying on the transfer paper in order to decorate a substrate or a material. It's not like a Reveal system or a direct-to-garment system where you are relying on the ink. So if you are looking for a system where you need to decorate 100% polyester, whether it's white or black or any other color in between, I made you aware earlier in the presentation that Epson now has a pre-treatment for their polyesters. I personally have not had the opportunity to try it, see the results, test it against, other printing methods that I know. So I really can't give an opinion one way or the other. But what I can say is if I had to recommend a system to someone today that they need to decorate black or dark 100% polyester materials, the only one that I know that can do it on a consistent basis are the OKI or other color laser white toner systems. And like I said, it's not really so much the toner or the system itself, it's the transfer paper that you employ. So you have to find a transfer paper specifically designed to decorate 100% polyester, but they are out there. So basically with an OKI system, we can decorate anything from white 100% cotton to black 100% polyester. Any color in between those 2 points, any material content in between those 2 points. Another thing that we've got to understand about digitally decorating shirts is something that I like to call production shrinkage. In other words, no system is 100% guaranteed. Whether you produce decorated items with screen printing equipment, a direct-to-garment, an OKI or other white toner system, or the new Reveal system. If you have to decorate 100 shirts, you are not going to get 100 perfect shirts. There is going to be a screw up here or there, what we call shrinkage. How do we combat that shrinkage? Well, when it comes to screen printing, the most common mistake that leads to t-shirts in the trash can instead of in your client's hands is screen registration. Like I said, since we are basically dropping process colors one on top of another, we have got to make sure that those images align perfectly so that when we squeeze our ink through the screens, everything lines up and we get a solid graphic. If our registration is slightly off, we're going to ruin garments. In my opinion, when it comes to direct-to-garment systems, the key to operating a direct-to-garment system is the pre-treatment. In other words, if you are going to spend the money on a DTG system, spend the money on good pre-treatment, and you will keep your shrinkage or waste shirts to a minimum. But you've got to understand, you've got to have even pre-treatment and consistent pre-treatment to have an even consistent graphic with a direct-to-garment printer. When it comes to operating the OKIs, the main thing is when you're feeding a transfer paper through, a lot of transfer papers are going to have varying thicknesses. In other words, they require a certain media type or a certain media weight that we have to set within the driver or the RIP program in order for the printer to use enough time and heat to properly bond the toner to the page. If we don't have proper toner bonding to our transfer sheet, the transfer is never going to work. So that is the key, in my opinion, to wasting transfers. So when it comes to OKIs, make sure that you run the proper media type or media weight for that specific paper through that OKI system. And if you have a question, contact a manufacturer or contact a vendor and ask. Now, when it comes to the Reveal Print Perfect system, and I kind of harped on this earlier, to me, the whole secret to operating a Reveal system is, one, you got to have a good, reliable swing-away heat press, not a clamshell press, a swing-away heat press. You got to be able to deliver even pressure, which clamshells have a difficult time of doing. So I would not recommend this process with a clamshell press at all. Think of it this way. You're saving so much money on a reveal system compared to an OKI, a direct-to-garment, or screen printing. You can use that extra savings to buy a quality heat press. But if you don't have a quality heat press, in my opinion, you're going to have a difficult time getting the reveal print system to produce consistent results. As far as the print systems that we've mentioned, one thing that they all have in common, what we're talking about is what we call surface decoration technology. Now, those of you who might be familiar with sublimation printing, what makes sublimation printing so unique is when we heat sublimation inks, those inks turn into a gas and they permeate into the polyester fiber and dye the fiber. So what makes sublimation so durable to polyester is it's not a graphic on the surface that can eventually wash away due to repeated washings and dryings or deterioration of the fabric. Our design is actually embedded into the polyester threads itself. And since polyester doesn't break down in the wash and dry, we can take a sublimated shirt on a 100% polyester garment, we can put it through a hot wash, hot dryer 100 times, and it'll still look like the day we printed it. That's if you can embed the ink into the fabric material. But screen printing, direct-to-garment printing, laser transfers with an OKI White Toner system, or inkjet transfers with a real print perfect system, we're talking about putting some type of layer on the surface of the material, not saturating or dyeing the material itself. So all of these printing methods are going to leave what I would call a feel or hand to a garment. And if you don't believe me, just grab an old screen printed t-shirt out of your own closet or dresser drawer and feel it for yourself. All of these printing methods are going to give you a raised hand. And when we're talking about going on to 100% cotton, understand that as we start to wash and dry 100% cotton material, it starts to break down in the washer and dryer. Whenever we empty the lint catcher from our dryer, we are emptying cotton that used to be part of our clothing. So if the material itself starts to break down, it's going to cause the image on the surface to break down as well. So after repeated washings, just about all of these printing methods will show some type of cracking or image deterioration. Now, cracking is one thing. Losing color vibrancy is different, in my opinion. In other words, all of these different printing methods are eventually going to show cracking. The important thing is, do they still retain the majority of their color after multiple washings? You will have some color loss, but they're going to vary depending on whether you're using a liquid ink system or a dry toner system. As far as surface decoration is concerned, understand that some polyester content in your fabric material does aid with durability, especially if we're dealing with a t-shirt transfer. Because like I said, with most t-shirt transfers, it really doesn't matter if we're going to cotton or polyester. They work on either fabric material. So having a little bit of polyester in the material content is going to help with image durability, as far as the material not breaking down in the washer and dryer as faster as 100% cotton. As far as a permanent solution, like I said, if we're talking about cotton, we have to dye the cotton. If we're talking about sublimation, we're talking about polyester, we have to sublimate polyester. But unless we're talking about actual cotton dyeing or sublimation into white polyester, understand that all these printing methods will break down eventually over the course of time. Another thing that we have to take into consideration, whether we're investing in any of these systems, is how do we price our print jobs? How do we come up with an accurate cost per print? Now, when it comes to screen printing, remember that a lot of our costs are fixed cost. They all go into the actual ramp up of setting up our screen printing equipment before we produce that first decorated garment. But the more garments that we produce with the same image, we're able to amortize that cost over the length of the production run. Now, when we're dealing with a direct-to-garment, an OKI or reveal system, we're talking about a variable cost per print. What we're talking about is how much ink or how much toner we've got to mix or lay down to generate that graphic. Now, while that lends itself well for custom jobs or small production runs, remember, every time you hit the print button with a variable system like a DTG or an OKI, it's going to be the same cost per print every time. We're not going to be able to amortize our cost like we can with screen printing. So it's something you need to keep in mind as you're pricing your jobs. Now, when it comes to screen printing, there is job pricing software that's available out there. And if you're a screen printer at the moment, you're not using job pricing software, please go out and start shopping some job pricing software. Again, it's the same premise of you got to know your exact cost in order to figure out if you're going to make a profit. Now, when it comes to a direct-to-garment system, since we're not dealing with a carrier paper, since we're dealing with uniform amounts of ink at a uniform cost, it's very easy to calculate your cost per print with a DTG system. Now, you can use your RIP software to manipulate ink levels, but understand that your cost per print pretty much is what it is. If it takes a certain amount of ink to generate that particular graphic, it's going to take that amount of ink, no more, no less. When it comes to the OKI systems, you really have to have a third-party RIP program that has a calculator built in to know your exact cost per print. If you're not using a RIP program and your RIP program doesn't have a calculator, then the best you can do with an OKI system is to calculate what I call worst case scenario. In other words, what's the most expensive transfer paper you can feed through the printer, and what if you had to lay down cyan, magenta, yellow, and graphic to the point where you had 100% toner coverage? It's going to vary depending on the laser model, but if you don't have a program that can calculate the exact amount of cyan, magenta, yellow, process black, or true black, and white that it takes to use an OKI or white toner system, then you've got to assume that every print job is the most expensive print job that you can produce if you're going to have any hope of making a profit with your printing system. Now, the Reveal system, Reveal is working on a cost calculator for their RIP program. They're hoping to have an update soon where that cost calculator will be employed. Again, it will kind of work like the OKI system or the direct-to-garment systems, and the fact that all the ink cartridges hold a uniform amount of ink. They all cost the same amount. So as long as we know how much ink it's going to take total to generate that print, it's very easy to calculate a cost per print. So as far as my advice is concerned, if you're looking at getting into screen printing, what I consider to be a screen printing business model, you need to be an established shop or business. You don't want to do this out of your garage. You definitely don't want to do this out of a spare room inside your house. Remember, we're talking about chemical storage here. I would say as far as screen printing is concerned, I would almost consider it an art form. And whenever you're talking about screen printing, it's almost like being an electrician or being a plumber. You almost need an apprenticeship, so to speak, to really learn all the intricacies that are involved with screen printing. I understand that today I may have made screen printing sound simple, but believe me, that's why I put the easy button in the presentation. Nothing is simple. It does help if you have experienced employees that know how to operate screen printing equipment. But what you got to consider is, if you're in a screen print business model, then you got to think of a typical job as you're creating 72 or more decorated garments per production run. Remember, all of these garments having the same image. If you're talking about 72 personalized garments, you're not talking about one job for 72 shirts. You're talking about 72 jobs for one shirt. That's where DTGs and OKIs and Reveal Print Perfect systems come into play. Remember that because we are basically relegated by the type of ink that we use, whenever we're screen printing, we want to use materials that are either 100% cotton or 100% polyester. If they're pure cotton or pure poly, decorating them is easy. Where it gets tricky is when we start dealing with blends. Remember, you're going to look at an initial investment, in my opinion, of about around $25,000 or more to set up a legitimate screen print operation for a business. Now, also understand that when we're dealing with screen printing, my basic motto is you're choosing quantity over quality. If that's your business model, look at screen printing. When it comes to the direct-to-garment business model, like I said, it helps to be an established shop with a direct-to-garment system, given the cost of the system and your need to get a return on your investment in a decent time. So, in my opinion, it's hard to make money with a direct-to-garment system being a home-based business. You know, you might be able to get some traffic on your website if you got some really cool graphics, but basically you need to give people more opportunity to see your printer, the abilities, what it can do. Why? Because you want to keep that printer running. Now, the nice thing about a direct-to-garment system is you don't necessarily need to have a shop of employees to operate a direct-to-garment system. A lot of the direct-to-garment systems that we've covered in today's presentation can be operated by one person, okay? But remember, we're talking about custom or small production runs. We're not talking about volume production. So if your typical job is, let's say, under 72 decorated shirts, you're in the realm of a DTG printer. If your typical job is over 72 shirts, odds are you're probably screen printing. But again, if your clients demand customization, DTG falls nice into that. By the time you invest in the printer, your pre-treatment application, which is hopefully a consistent pre-treat machine, not a Wagner power sprayer. By the time you look at gathering all that equipment, you're probably looking at an investment of about around $30,000 or more to get into direct-to-garment printing. Now, I think the best environment for a direct-to-garment printing is an established shop with what I call an art wall. Best example I can think of is here in beautiful Mobile, Alabama. We're very close to some white sandy beaches, which means we're very close to surf shops and skate shops. And if you've ever gone into a surf shop or a skate shop, you'll see all these designs on the wall where a kid can walk in, pick the design he wants, pick the color shirt he wants it on, and they basically produce it. Well, in my opinion, that's kind of the wheelhouse of what a direct-to-garment system can do. It's that on-demand, one-off printing that you've got to produce lickety-split. You know, in other words, you got to produce it for your client while your client is standing there staring at you. If that's your need, a direct-to-garment system lends itself well to that. But understand, you've got to have the traffic or the throughput to keep that direct-to-garment system printing. Printing DTG is a happy DTG. An idle DTG is the devil's workshop. But remember, your focus of your business is custom garments. That's where you want to start looking at a direct-to-garment. Now, where should we draw the line, so to speak, between do we go with a direct-to-garment system as opposed to an OKI system? Basically, what it comes down to, both systems can operate with a single user or single operator. What I feel is the advantages of the OKI is we're dealing with dry toner, we're not dealing with liquid ink. Another advantage is we can pre-print designs, which we cannot do with a direct-to-garment system. So it really comes down to what I would consider is your expertise as an operator. Where I think the OKI printers really come into play, it's the perfect printer for what I would call the infrequent decorator. In other words, you need to put designs on the dark garments. You need to put designs onto dark substrates, but you may not have the demand for that every day. Maybe it's a couple of times a week. Maybe it's a couple of times a month. If you're in a situation where you're not printing to your dark garment system constantly, you definitely want to consider an OKI if you're a smaller shop or just starting out. Just from the maintenance standpoint alone, it's going to save you a lot of headache. If you're brand new into this business, it's much easier to get started with an OKI system and eventually work your way into a DTG as opposed to trying to master a DTG system right out the chute. Another advantage of these OKI systems, like I said, is if you need a multi-function print system, a system that can not only do light garments and dark garments, but can do hard substrates, can do colored stationery, you know, all types of different applications that lend themselves just fine to laser printing systems. When it comes to the Reveal Print Perfect system, what I think is the major benefit of this system is you really do have a one person or one operator system that lends itself to being portable. Direct to garment systems do not like to be hauled from location to location. They're big, they're bulky, and you got to worry about the ink shaking up in the lines or the cartridges. When it comes to a laser system, they don't lend themselves well to portability because we're dealing with dry toner that if it gets shaken within the printer, it creates a condition that we call toner bombing. It looks like your color laser printer just went through a local 5K color run. In other words, it's got cyan, magenta, yellow, and white caked all over it, which basically keeps the unit from operating. Also, the fact that OKI White Toner systems are going to require more power than your typical DTG system because we actually have to heat up a fuser element or a fuser assembly within the unit. So if we've got a unit that requires anywhere from 8 to 12 amps of power to keep that fuser assembly at a specific heat, well, that's fine if we're in a controlled shop. But if we're out on site where we have limited access to power, or even worse, generator power, at that point, saving every amp or saving every watt becomes critical. So if you need a decent on-demand portable system that is not expensive like a direct-to-garment system is concerned and isn't going to lend itself well to, or lends itself better to power restraints than something like an OKI White Toner system, that's where I think the Reveal Print Perfect system fits in nicely. It's a good little portable take from site to site location system. So if that's your business model, it's something that you definitely need to consider. So we're coming to the end of our presentation here. First off, I want to thank just about everybody for hanging in through the entire presentation. I hope that everyone here was able to get more of an understanding and have a better knowledge base of these dark garment printing systems than what they had before sitting through this webinar. However, should you have any questions about the material that was discussed, please feel free to contact us, and there are numerous ways you can do it. You can visit our website by visiting www.conde.com or www.dietrans.com. Either location will take you to our site. If you have a specific question, you can email saleshelp@conde.com. That goes direct to our excellent account manager staff, a lot of the people here with years of experience dealing with these particular systems. And your questions, no matter how strange or oddball they may be, we will do our best to answer them. Even if we don't have the answer right off the top of our heads, we'll always try our best to point you to someone who will. So I just want to state for the record that we are not the screen printing experts. We do not sell direct-to-garment systems. We do carry the OKIs. We do carry the Reveal Print Perfect systems. But if you have any questions regarding the content that we cover today, visit our website, send an email to saleshelp@conde.com, or you can contact us directly. Our toll-free number is 1-800-826-6332. Our international number, area code 251-633-5704. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll try our best to get those answered. This is going to conclude our presentation. On behalf of Conde Systems, National Business Media, the MBM Shows, and Conde TV, my name is Douglas DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Conde Systems Incorporated. This has been our presentation of Will Digital Transfer Systems Make Direct-to-Garment Printing Obsolete? My time is up, and I thank you for yours. Thank you very much for attending. Have a good day.